4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and today we're going to be talking about Fairfax County's new Special Education PTA. Joining me is the president of this brand new organization, Diane Gould, and also the delegate from the FCC PTA, Joanne Walton. Welcome so much. Thank you, ladies, for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So this is a brand new PTA. It was brought to my attention by Joanne, who's ever on the lookout for organizations that need to be elevated.
She is.
But it rolled out in April of this year. So
right.
Tell us a little bit, Fairfax County Public Schools, a huge school system, the 10th largest in the nation, I believe.
It is.
And so why a special education PTA and why now?
Okay, well, I'm one of the co-founders, actually, and Joanne's one of our founding members. But for me, it started because I have 2 kids with special needs. I have a son with autism, and I have a daughter with ADHD and dyslexia. And actually before that, I actually also had dyslexia, and my husband has dyslexia, and my mother has dyslexia, so we're a huge dyslexia family. And I think probably around 2013, I think it was, I started an online support group. And what I found was that no matter who the parent was and no matter what the special need was, we all had similar needs. And we're all kind of floundering in the dark. We didn't know exactly what to do or where to go. So it occurred to me that we needed to do something to help other parents, like me, and like Joanne, like all of us. And so I talked to a friend at Arlington SEPTA, and she said, Arlington SEPTA has been around for, I think at that point had been six years or so.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And she said, you guys need to start a SEPTA. And at that point, I didn't even really know what a SEPTA was. So what's a SEPTA? And so it's a PTA that serves the special education population for the whole county. It's not for one school, it's for the entire county. And there's a few of them all over the nation, but there's not a ton of them. And as you said, Fairfax County is a huge county.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We have over 25,000 students with IEPs alone, so that doesn't include 504 plans, which are another protection for students with disabilities or unidentified students. But as it tends to happen in any particular one PTA, school-based PTA, special education needs are not going to be the forefront because in a particular school, it's the minority of the population. Right. But these students need lots of extra support, and they need support as they grow. So one of our goals is to, start this when students are first entering the system with early identification and infant-toddler connection, and follow them all the way through, even just as they're graduating, to launch into the community, because one thing we also know is that transitions are not easy for our students, but also there's not a lot of services at any of the transition moments.
Yeah, right, that's true. So
yeah.
my son had an IEP back in the mid-90s.
Oh, yes, very
and
different.
it was very difficult.
Yeah.
And I knew no other parents whose children had an IEP, and it was new to me, and I was doing it by myself.
Yep.
And I can tell you, having had a support group or people to help you through or to find other parents that you can compare notes with would have been helpful.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to just figure it out on my own. Quite frankly, it was I'm so glad that my son is out of school.
Yeah.
And I will never have another IEP meeting for the rest of my life. That was something to celebrate.
Yes.
Yeah. So Joanne, how did you get involved with this particular group?
Yeah, so at our local PTA, our local school, most of the schools I've been fortunate because they've had, special ed committees, and we've had little, support groups in our school. And then when I switched schools, my son switched schools, and they didn't have one, so okay, we'll start one here, and we'll get parents together and get a meeting and have speakers and social events. But then it sort of felt like, you're just doing it here, and then other schools aren't doing it. You sort of start to hear through the grapevine, the schools are very different. And so just so happened, I'm on Facebook a lot, as you know, and so I happened to see that, start to see on Facebook that there's starting to be a Fairfax County special ed PTA, and I was like, oh yes, that's what we need to do. We need to organize as a county, because you see at schools there's a lot of inconsistency, and a lot of parents not knowing who to turn to when they do come up against some issues.
So let's talk about that. It's a huge county, and the schools vary, and so some PTAs are very active in the schools where there's more resources. And then we have schools that have very few resources and very small PTAs or non-existent PTAs,
Right.
but you still have students in these special populations that need support.
Exactly.
So what is the plan for reaching into all of these schools to let them know that this is a resource?
Well, we're very active on social media, and we have a website. And one thing that actually Joanne is helping us with is getting all of the names of the special ed reps or helping schools that don't have them yet to create that position within their own PTAs so they can start sending people to our meetings to learn what's available in the county, how to navigate the system, and take that information back to their schools. So I don't know if you want to talk about that more.
Yeah, and actually to your question, one thing that we're really wanting to do is to put the T in PTA and to really, I've actually had teachers in schools say, you know, I work with the kids, I would really like to actually even do this role. Some schools, it's not a parent that's being the special ed rep to the PTA, it is a teacher. So
that makes sense, but a lot of times you hear that teachers are already overburdened with what they have to do, and so it's amazing that teachers want to step up and offer their time when it seems like their time is at a premium and they've already got more on their plate than they can manage.
Exactly. But they see the need. I think they're seeing the need for trying to reach out to the parents and provide that extra support and get the parents connected to people who have experience.
I feel very strongly about that as well. I think one of the things is, oftentimes you think of a PTA, you think about parents.
Right.
But as Joanne says, there's a T in there. And one thing we really want to do is work collaboratively with the school system and with the teachers and other staff. And, for us, one thing we've been involved with advocacy already, in our first 2 months is speaking out at the budget meetings for the school board budget meetings. And, our teachers can't do their job if they don't have funding. They can't live where they work. They're not going to want to stay. And we do know, we several of us went to the PTA conference in Richmond a few weeks ago, and one thing we heard is in Fairfax County, the average retention rate for a special education teacher is 3 years. So there's a high turnover. And unfortunately, with budget cuts, they have less and less support. So we want to think, how can we not make this an adversarial thing? How can we work with them and help the teachers and staff get what they need in order to do their jobs? And hopefully that will help alleviate some stress. But it's most helpful if we have people that are on that side who are joining us and working with us so we can actually know what they need.
Yeah, I think that's the key, isn't it? Because a lot of people are like, we've come here to help,
right?
And you offer what you have, but not what you have may not be what's needed the most.
Right.
So that advocacy piece by special education teachers would be very important.
Right.
But in schools, so like we said, I work with a program called Grant Involved that works in Title I schools.
Right.
Title I schools have a special struggle all their own because they've got kids with a variety of needs, special education and otherwise, and that there is a dearth of volunteers. There are non-existent PTAs.
Right.
Suggestions have been made in the past, which I think is very interesting, about pairing up schools to have one school be a sister school to another. I like the idea of a sister school.
Yeah.
So that you can have a PTA that might be active in one school partnering with a school in a close proximity that maybe doesn't have as many resources. Would that be something that down the road you would try to maybe do that to get your information into these schools that don't have an active PTA, or maybe the teachers aren't as aware of what you can provide?
It's a great idea. We hadn't actually thought about that before. One of the things we have been looking at is looking in terms of pyramids, and so trying to work within pyramids and actually even take our events and not just have them in central Fairfax County, but move them to different areas of the county so that people who live to those areas, if they can't drive 45 minutes to an event, they'll still have events coming to that area. So that's something we've been talking about. And we do actually have a committee that's going to be outreach and diversity. So one of our interests is really working with the, what do they call it, the parent liaisons.
Oh yes, the parent liaisons. Yeah.
The parent liaisons at each individual school, and getting the parent liaisons names and information so that we can help them reach their special populations, because they're often the first point of contact for especially Title I schools for
Right.
various populations, students that aren't native English speakers. So that's one way we hope to reach out. But I love the idea of sister schools. I think that's
Well,
something
you know,
we could think
it's a way of spreading resources
Yeah.
around from those who have a lot to those who have very little.
Right.
And actually, I think I heard that on an interview on NPR, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was somebody who was talking about partnering up with schools, and they said, you know, sister schools is just a good, you know, term for that kind of partnership. Because I think somebody had said, oh, maybe we should have one school adopt another school, and someone said, no,
Yeah.
very bad.
Yeah.
Very bad. The whole dynamic of that is very
Yeah.
bad. But when you
Right.
say sister schools, it's like a sister city program,
Right,
right?
yes, yes,
There's an
yes,
exchange, back and
exactly.
forth, an exchange. And so, given that the county is so big, even within pyramids, that might be a possibility.
Yeah.
But some of the pyramids have a preponderance of schools with fewer resources, so it
Right.
might need to be across pyramids
Right,
in order to make it
Absolutely.
more even.
Yep.
But I think, you know, there's highly motivated parents out there who want to help their own children, certainly, but they understand the struggles and they certainly want to help other parents. And I
Yeah.
think the non-English speaking aspect of this becomes important. You're going to need volunteers
Yeah.
and supporters who can speak more than English.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
So you've got resources on your website. What are
Okay.
some of the other ways that people can engage?
Well, they can come to our meetings and our events, and those are great ways. I don't know, do you want to take some of this, Joanne?
Yeah, and I mean, of course, the social media, that
Yeah.
we have a
Right.
Facebook page and a Facebook group as well that people can join. And I think that just, you know, it's hard to reach. That's one of the things that we want to do. And what I'm trying to do, working with the Fairfax County Council of PTAs, is to try and infuse information, you know, at the local level. And by working with those local special ed PTA reps that right now have been pretty much working, you know, in a vacuum.
Right.
So to try and get them all on board and get them all connected, and so that we can share information, you know, with everybody at the local level. So it's really hard, you know, when you're in a larger organization to get down to that level.
ground level.
Yeah, when you talk about, you know, special populations, there's the special education population, but that might be within
Right.
an ethnic population of people who
Right.
speak a similar language, for
Right.
instance. And so you've got to find how to reach this subset of a subset
Exactly.
in a huge
Right.
school system.
Right,
Which
so that's
is a
where
huge
parent
challenge.
liaisons, I think,
Right.
will be really key, and then also the local special ed representatives at the local level.
Yeah.
That we're trying to determine which schools have them, and definitely encouraging, you know, parents who say, "Wait, my school doesn't have that," then say, "Okay, how would you like to do that?"
Right.
So, do
we're
you
starting
have
to build
regularly
that.
scheduled meetings? I mean,
Yes.
should people know that it's like a particular time of the month?
Yes, so we're going to have, and we're still, I mean, we are so brand new.
Yeah.
We launched April 25th, which is actually 3 months earlier than we had initially planned to
Right.
launch. So we are going to have monthly board meetings and at least quarterly general membership meetings. So those will be posted in advance. Currently, our schedule has been the last Tuesday of every month for our regular board meetings, but that may change as the needs of our membership change. Everyone is always welcome to come to a board meeting, hear what's going on, find out what's going on, hang out. General membership meetings are when our general membership is going to vote on something or be directly involved in back and forth communication, so they'll have a chance to speak and things like that.
That's fantastic.
yeah.
And when we come back after this break, we're going to talk a little bit more about how people can find out more information and attend the meetings and reach out to the people who are part of this special education PTA.
Why is Connor having trouble focusing in school?
Having trouble finding Connor's middle school? Would you like directions?
No, why is Connor having trouble focusing in school?
Finding lowest airfare to Istanbul.
No, I'm tired of fighting with him over homework.
Home walk restaurant. Need a review?
No, I need help. He's very smart, but his mind wanders. He's disorganized.
I think I understand.
Oh, God.
French fries. Finding best potatoes.
No!
Russet. Fingerling. Yukon Gold.
Why don't you understand me?
Sorry, I was trying to show how Connor feels every day. Frustrating, isn't it? Redirecting to understood.org.
For the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues, this is what life can feel like. Explore understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues, designed to help your child thrive in school and in life. Understood.org, because understanding is everything.
Welcome back to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. Joining me to talk about the Fairfax County Special Education PTA is its founder and president, Diane Gould, and also their delegate to the FCC PTA, Joanne Walton. Thank you ladies so much for being here.
Thank you.
So at our break, we were starting to talk a little bit about how people can engage. You've got things on social media, you've got regularly scheduled meetings and board meetings. Let's talk a little bit about how you're trying to collaborate with existing organizations in the community that are already trying to help ameliorate some of these challenges.
Right. Well, absolutely. Advocacy I think is really important to partner with other organizations, not reinvent the wheel, but enhance each other's work. So there's so many great organizations out there that are dealing with little populations here and there, or even big populations, and how can we work together? So we could work with, for example, POAC, Parents of Autistic Children, and they have a lot of autism events and things. So we could work with them, support some of their initiatives, they could support some of ours, work together with joint memberships, and hopefully sponsor events together down the line. That's just one example. There's a lot of different ones. So we can reach more people through working together with other organizations.
Yeah. The ARC of Northern Virginia, I know, is a great partner. The JCC has a lot of special education programs too.
Where my son goes.
Absolutely.
He's involved with the camp and with different programming there, so it's fabulous. Yeah,
they're great.
So your advocacy page on your website, or you've got a support group listing that is growing, and I know that you're continuing to work on those relationships because you're brand new, first of all.
Right.
Some of these organizations are not brand new, but you're brand new. So how you work with them is evolving.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we want to look at outside organizations. We first of all just introduce ourselves. This is who we are. We have a lot of crossover. How can we work well together? So at this point, our board members are doing a lot of, meeting with school board members, meeting with members of the community, meeting with other advocacy groups. Let's go get a coffee and talk about how we can work together. And really, that's just hopefully can just grow indefinitely. But another way to think of partnerships is even within the county. So for example, we talked a little bit earlier about Title I schools. A lot of those services, ESOL services, fall under the Department of Special Services, which is also the department that special education falls under. So there's a lot of crossover there. So within the county, we can support each other as well. And initiatives that are good for one group are likely going to cross over and be good for another. So pairing up in that way.
Right, so we've started to get involved with the advisory groups that the school board has set up. So there is, and we just learned too that there's the Title I advisory group. So we want to, get involved and make sure they're aware of what we're doing. And we've also been involved with the advisory group for the students with disabilities. So we're starting to make inroads and figure out where and exactly, who we need to partner with and who do we need to collaborate with to make sure that they're aware of what we're doing and we know what they're doing, so that we can have much more the information that we're giving to parents can be much more complete, and we all seem to be on the same page as far as what we're doing.
So how's your relationship with the school board? How have you been embraced, and how have they reacted to the fact that this is started? Because budget hearings are always fraught. Everybody goes and tries to, make the case for why their resources shouldn't be cut. And I'm sure the school board at some point probably feels like that's the only time anyone ever talks to them is to beg that their program not be cut.
Well, I think there's two things, right? So I think when SEPTA was first forming, I'd heard from through the grapevine, some people were really excited and some people were a little apprehensive. Is this going to be a group of parents complaining? That is not our mission at all. Our mission is to work collaboratively and make it better for everyone. So I think since we've actually come out and we've spoken on behalf of teachers and we've spoken on behalf of special ed services, I've actually had several people within the county thank me for our membership to doing that, speaking out at the board meetings. And I have found every single school board member that we have spoken to one-on-one to be really welcoming and so encouraging of our mission. So I think we're actually very lucky to have a lot of good support. But we also know that resources are scarce, which is why we had to think. You have to think about it from all perspectives, and you can't just say, well, I want this huge budget increase when there's no money. So you have to say, well, how can we be effective as an organization saying, this program's working, but that one's not, so maybe that's one to get rid of, and things like that. And so trying to figure out ways that within the constraints that the county has, that the school board has, how can we best accomplish our mission.
So let's talk about the fact that there's unfilled special education teacher positions and why that is and what the answer is.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah,
That's a $1 million question. Yeah, so in our efforts to sort of figure out what's going on in the county and going to these different trainings that the different, like the Parent Education Council offers, we learned that we currently in Fairfax County have a huge shortage of teachers. There's vacancies that were not filled this past school year, and we have the largest amount of vacancies for the state of Virginia and also for the our country. So yeah, we want to start working with the county to say, what can we do? How can we help teachers? The county has started to address that. They have started some training programs for some of their the instructional assistants to transition to become classroom teachers. So they're starting to do that. We also want to definitely, figure out how we can also support that and they're starting to recruit in other locations.
But the elephant in the room is teacher pay.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
And, so we're talking with Andrew Hahn from the Mason Life program, where their graduate students are actually the instructors at Mason Life. He says, they're all hired before they get their diploma.
Right.
But, they go to where they're going to make money that they can live on.
Right.
And that is not Fairfax County Public Schools, and there seems to be an unwillingness to address that.
I think, truly, I don't know that there's an unwillingness to address it. I think that the way that our funding structure is set up with our schools, there's only, in Virginia, which I'm sure you know, there's Dillon rule, which means there's only very limited ways that a school board can actually raise money to fund the schools. And also, they're dependent on what the state gives us, which is
we get 19 cents back on the dollar.
Yeah.
I heard that yesterday. For every tax dollar we send to Richmond, the county gets 19 cents back.
Truly, Fairfax County funds a lot of the rest of the state.
Yep.
And unfortunately, what's happening, though, is if we run our schools into the ground, we're not going to be a desirable place to live and work anymore, which means then we won't even be making money to support the rest of the state. So this is truly a state issue, and I think it's something that is one of our long-term goals in terms of advocacy. But then you also have your Board of Supervisors, and that's another group that we want to start meeting with and talking to, because they control how much a significant amount of money that's going to go to the school board. And, they have to understand as well what the needs are and the mission is. We have people call us all the time who want to relocate to Fairfax County because they've heard how great our services are,
right?
And special ed.
Right, absolutely.
But what's going to happen is if we don't pay our teachers, it's already happening.
Right.
They're leaving, and there's a national teacher shortage. There's an even greater special ed teacher shortage, and we have one of the highest. And what's happening is Fairfax County does wonderful training for our teachers. They invest in training. It's great. Teachers get their training and they leave because
they
go
next door to Arlington. Okay, they go next door to Arlington. Let's just be clear. And and the other elephant in the room is the meals tax. And the fact that the meals tax was killed by businesses and the Chamber of Commerce in this county who didn't think pay raises for teachers was a good enough reason to tax people's voluntary. Nobody has to eat in a restaurant, right? People object to raising the real estate tax any more than it already is because where you live is where you live. I mean, if you own a house, it's not voluntary. You pay real estate taxes. But a meals tax on prepared food eaten in a restaurant, and it was killed by the businesses in the chamber here. And so that's not helpful.
It was a tragedy.
It was a tragedy. And I honestly think that's probably one of the worst things that's happened to us in ages. And we can't even get it back on the ballot for 3 years. And only then if we're given the okay to get it back on the ballot. I think fundamentally, Fairfax County residents do not understand how Fairfax County schools are funded. They don't. And I have talked to so many parents who did not understand that that's the only way to get money at this point. And they, people kept saying to me, "Well, why doesn't the school board just give us more money?" Well, the school board can't just give money because it doesn't have money and it can't raise money on its own. So Virginia is very unique and a very difficult situation, and it really does. I do not see a solution for us unless it comes from, the General Assembly. I don't know how else to solve this problem, but I do think it is the responsibility for every single Fairfax County resident, whether or not you're a parent, because the children are the ones who's going to grow up and live and work in our community. And you were a child once yourself,
Well, it's interesting how the Women's March came together. And I was down on the mall with all of those women, and the thing I wanted to ask is, where y'all been? Like, where y'all been? I love that you're here. I love that you're plugged in. I love that you're energized. But where were you for things like the meals tax in Fairfax County when you don't understand what that meant to our public school system? Where were you? And now everybody's engaged, and it's great. But as you said, we've got 3 years to wait.
Yeah, and I think it seems like also the school board is starting to realize, and starting to want to, collaborate more and work more with the board of supervisors to try and advocate and say, hey, this is why we need the funding, and to be, straightforward and sort of transparent about where the funding. It just seems like there's sort of this lack of trust, I guess, that's been going on, right, between all of the entities. So, one thing too that I learned that I don't think people realize through this whole funding thing is that for every penny that we raise, the whole idea of the property taxes, right? Like, we can't raise those, and they weren't raised, but if the cost of everything is going up. But if we raise the property tax, and this is what they did to they've actually eradicated homelessness in Fairfax County, or started the process from the 1 penny, right? So they increased the property taxes. When they increased it 1 penny, it costs me as a homeowner about $50 a year. That generates $27 million of revenue for the county. So I think, it's those kinds of things that once you're like, wait, what? My penny, my $50 can, and then collaboratively we can have.
There is a low tax, no tax, small government mythology that actually started when they threw the T over the side of the ships in Boston Harbor, that we don't want taxes or no taxation. I mean, there is just so much fundamental mythology about taxes, and some people just take the position, no taxes is better. And I'm like, I don't know how you think the things that you value that, add to the quality of your life are funded.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. People want the services, but they don't want to pay for them. And that is a huge problem. And, Fairfax County is an expensive place to live. So all of our residents are thinking, well, we're so strapped. Yeah. But when you really think about it, when you break it down and you stop saying this is somebody else's problem to solve. It's not somebody else's problem to solve. It's our problem. We are Fairfax County, so we have to solve the problem. There's such a desire. I used to be the president of a homeowners association. There's such a desire for people to say, well, the board did this and the board did that. Well, the board is the elected representatives of the residents. The residents elect them.
So we are the board.
You are the board.
And we are the
Fairfax
school,
County.
And we are, that's a great way of putting it. We are Fairfax County.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say thanks to both of you for coming on the show, explaining what it is you're trying to do. People should visit your website.
Absolutely.
And that website is?
It's www.fairfaxcountysepta.org. And we are also on Facebook, Fairfax County SEPTA.
Okay. And that's where people should go for more information. Thank you so much for joining us, because this is what you need to know.